Hello everyone, and welcome back to the brand new episode of Let's Talk Sports. I hope everyone is keeping well and healthy and is happy. A very happy weekend, firstly. So, I'm your host and host, Ruchira Manekar, and today we are going to talk to someone who is our alumni and he is working in the sports education background. His name is Naren Desai. So, please welcome Naren.
Hi, thanks a lot, Ruchi. Thanks a lot.
Hi, Naren. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All well. Thank you so much. Firstly, thank you for giving us your valuable time, and I'm
Not at
happy
all,
to
not at
talk
all.
to you.
Thanks a
Okay,
lot for having me. Thanks a lot for having me and giving me this opportunity. So thanks a lot for that.
great. Thank you again. Okay, so shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, absolutely great. So I will start with one question that really comes into my mind. Firstly, so can you simplify what sports management education is to you and our audience? Because I think that is something that I'd like to give a little information about to our
Okay.
audience who is watching right now. So if you could do that, I'll be great.
Okay. So it's fairly simple. Um, in my opinion, sports is a branch of management, by which I mean that there are a lot of concepts in the sports industry
Right.
that now function as if sports is a business. And for any sports lovers, and me personally, I say it with a very heavy heart that sports has now become a business.
Right.
And once sports becomes a business, there are two things that are very important for any sporting organization, team, individual, brand. First is to make money, to make profits, to make revenues, and the second is to survive in the industry, to survive in the market. And the moment you have these two things coming in, you're replicating a corporate structure, you're
Yeah.
replicating management topics, a lot of the fundamentals. However, since the sports industry works a little differently, you tweak it, um, and that's essentially what sports management is. So it's no rocket science. There's few things that are new. However,
Yeah.
there are few things that are overlapping, but they still work differently, and hence it's the importance to study it rather
Hmm.
than stumble upon things that you learn. And since the market is so much more cutthroat than it ever was, the margins for error are very slim, and hence sports management um, is derived. And I think you should probably learn a little bit about it.
Absolutely, you just gave a bang on answer. I think when you spoke about survival, it just hit me. Right now, I'm in office. I am doing this live session from my office directly. So that is how survival skills we learn from sports.
Sure.
Right. Awesome. Great. So, how do you think? Next question I want to ask is, how do you think it is important for an individual to enter into the sports fields, or particularly into the sports management field or anything related to sport at a very early age?
So I'd try to say that sports management hits home with a lot of people who are associated with sports at a very young age. So a lot of people would be sports people,
Yeah.
sports persons who are playing any sport at any level. It could be recreational, it could be amateur, it could be semi-professional, professional. So the way you have sports that is taught to you since a very young age, and then it becomes second nature. The same way sports needs to become, or sports management needs to become second nature.
Hmm.
And I
Correct.
believe it can only become second nature when you get a little taste of it growing up, which is
Correct.
during your schooling days, where there is sensitization towards the fact that there is something you can do with sports and sports management. And then once you're sensitized at a younger age, you know the basics, you know that this is something that I can deal with, something I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
Only then can you have it being taught to you. And I think to have it inculcated into your day-to-day life at a younger age, you need to ensure that you're trying to sensitize as much of the youth as
hmm,
possible and trying to get as many people involved in the process. It's fairly new. No one's going to understand where it can take you, what the
yeah,
importance is. And hence, you need to give them a little taster, let them see what the world is, give them a little taster, let them see what the world is. So I think a little bit
absolutely.
of a little mix of the both.
Absolutely. Having sports into your life at an early age, I think it's a life skill that you're learning,
Exactly.
which which definitely you understand once you grow up and get into the industry. Rather, not only sports industry, but any industry maybe.
Exactly. So the best part is that for anybody who is playing a sport, they've already learned a lot of their life skills, just the basics: never give up, hard work, and consistency. And you have your off days, but you still come in and still give it your 100%. All of those things. And if you look at it funnily, that's exactly the way management works. That's exactly the way the real world works. That's exactly how any corporate industry, brand, individual, somebody who is aiming for as high as possible functions. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
the faster we're as people who are involved with the education industry, and I think in some way or the other have the burden to pass this on to the coming generations in the best way possible. I think if we show them that similarity, I think it hits home.
Awesome, definitely. I hope this particular thing makes whoever our audience realize that it is very important to have the skill of not only just management and at least a sports in your day-to-day life and they start inculcating that into their day-to-day life. I hope that.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Great. So, the third question that comes into my mind is like players generally focus upon their game and study, and it do get hampered. Like, when you're having a sports on your other side and you are also studying, it does get hampered in some way or the other. So, what do you think how a sports person can find an equilibrium between education as well as sports? Because I feel both the sectors are very important and we cannot neglect each one of them because each one of them are really important at their own point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So um, I think there are two or three parts to it. The first, it comes from the home, where I think the biggest support system that any kid has is their parents. And
Right.
if the parents are either pressuring too much on the studies angle or too much on the sporting angle, I in my opinion, I don't think that's the exact sweet spot. um, I have personally seen a lot of parents who go out and sit for their kids exams when they're in the fifth or sixth, and I'm like, तुम लोग तो एग्जाम नहीं दे रहे हो. I said, what are you going to achieve by sitting outside?
Right.
Just let the kid enjoy. So
Right.
when there's too much pressure, it's not right. When you've left the reins completely, I think that's also not right. As in, there needs to be a little tug, a little pull, a little push in either or. And
Hmm.
I'm just giving a little bit from personal experience. I played football at a national level consistently from under 13s to 17s, 18s, after
Oh
which I
wow.
went on to play university. And then when I came to Ironwood, I played Division 2 in the Bombay League. And then when I went to UK for my master's in sports management, I went on to play for the university team over there too. So
Awesome.
it is, and the reason I'm quoting this is that there was a very solid support from the family. And
Right.
then the second part to it is your education system. It could be your school, it could be your coaching academy, it could be your professional academy, strength and conditioning, gym, wherever you go to for your
Right.
sport and to improve as a player, your college, your university, your institute, they play a very important role in explaining the balance. You need to explain the balance. You don't need to pull or push the kid towards one side.
Absolutely.
Explain it, make it visible to the kid, and then the third part is leave it to the kid's wisdom. Where if the kid is able to understand that if I'm putting in these many hours in my sport, I'm always looking towards efficiency. I'm looking
Correct.
towards utilizing those 4 hours to get an output worth of say 8 hours, for example. And I've seen it with a lot of sports people who then go on to study. They are very efficient
Absolutely.
because they exactly know how to grasp a concept. And I'm not saying mugging up. Don't ever, that's something I'm completely against the whole concept of mugging up. So they understand the concept really quick because learning, the habit of learning,
Yeah.
is already ingrained in them from a very young age. And then you
Yes.
have your parents, your coaching academies, and your schools letting you create an environment or to live in an environment where you can continuously keep grasping, where the player or whoever the individual is a good student. And
Right.
I don't say student with age, but the quality that is
Hmm.
there of grasping, and that's how they eventually end up grasping concepts and doing well in their studies too. So
Yes. Yes.
I think there's a little bit of few things that come together, but if they do come together, the individual itself is able to make a very informed decision for themselves, is what I believe.
Absolutely. I can relate a lot with this because I've myself been a professional table tennis player. So I can understand what you're trying to say. And this topic is very near to me because I do that
Exactly.
in everyday life and talk to others and make
Exactly.
them understand exactly same thing.
Yeah.
Like, in my life, parents, coaches, education, my teachers, and everyone has played a very important role. And that
Yeah.
is how my decision making skill has improved. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, so it is very, very important. And
Yes.
you eventually become very independent.
You do, but however, and thanks for mentioning this. You do become independent, but you're never the same way your parents say. You're always going to be a kid for me.
Absolutely.
And if the individual remembers that they are never beyond or bigger than or they know too much, the
Mm-hmm.
more and again I'm saying these three things continue to not just pull or push, but then eventually ensure that the
Yeah,
student or the player or the athlete is grounded, and that's how they continue to do better in both. And then eventually if they want to make a decision to choose one of the paths, it's very
yeah,
tough to walk
yeah,
two paths at once, and I would never suggest that. But when when they have that opportunity, they know and they can make an informed choice that okay, if looking at my current performance, I don't think I can make it as a professional player. Or
Mm-hmm.
looking at the way I'm inclined towards education or to the professional side of things, I don't think that's for me. I'll try and figure something out for me, which is a little
Correct.
different. So
Correct.
they're able to make a decision. Basically, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, they're able to differentiate with what is right
Exactly.
and what is not right. Correct.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
There's
And
no
now,
force, basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And which is very important again.
Yeah.
Great. So now that we're talking about this, anyways, so on the same lines that I want to ask you, over the years, how much do you think the education system has evolved over the years, specifically into sports, like sports education has evolved over the years? I want to understand from your point of view, how do you think it has?
So when we talk about the education, we need to also look at how sports have evolved. Now,
Correct.
if you see, just take the example of India. If you compare before 5, 6, 7 years, kabaddi was not as big as it is today.
Hmm.
Football wasn't as big as it is today.
Yes.
IPL was big, and however, with the years, they have taught Indian professionals how to pool in money,
Absolutely.
all done in the right way, but how to pool in money, utilize it in the best way possible, how your federations end up getting more revenues, which gets a trickle down effect into your grassroots. So,
Right.
and as people who are involved in the sports education industry, so to say, when we're on top of these changes in sports, they have a automatic effect on the education. So the
Absolutely.
first is the first is with evolving education. The first key piece is the sports being evolved. The next is the use of technology that is coming in, and when we talk about education, your big metro cities in India, they have the facilities.
Yeah, yeah,
However,
yeah,
that's not the only place you can find or polish or nurture talent, and it is in your tier twos, your mini metros,
yeah.
and below that
Yes,
is where the real fun is. So
yes,
reaching out to these people in a way that you're able to explain the whole concept, because it's fairly new for all these students in this kind of a city where they do not have as much exposure,
right,
or don't have as many people around them talking about the same things. So the next part becomes the invasion of technology, and how do you utilize that technology to pull in your resources to grasp the attention of these people, and then eventually end up in some way teaching the very same concepts through technology. Because coming to the third part, we forget that education cannot be the same. If you're
absolutely, yeah,
talking about the sports evolving, we're talking about your tier two cities evolving to mini metros and mini metros aiming to move even further. You need to know that education needs to evolve. You still cannot have chalkboard teaching. And the moment that changes, the moment you put an emphasis to the fourth part, that is the student.
hmm.
I would like to share this small anecdote that I was in a meeting and recently, and funnily, they said that the moment you start treating the student as a client, and we'll see the crossover between sports and management, the moment you start teaching, I mean treating the student as a client, you know that they are the most important part. Consumer is king, client is king, the student is the king. And the moment you make the student the single most important entity, everything around it
Hmm.
morphs itself to
Absolutely.
ensure that the kid is benefiting. The
Hmm.
way in which you are taught, the languages of learning, I would say that you can't use chalkboard.
Yeah.
Examples, case studies, real life scenarios, students trying their hands on to something, getting an industry professionals to come in and talk to them, videos, different activities, just involving the students where even if they come in for just 45 minutes to 50 minutes for a session, for a master class or an hour, they go back enriched and not just sleepy. If that's your aim, I think you're already evolving with the sports education. And the last part is India is doing great, has done well, will continue to be one of, in my opinion, one of the biggest superpowers that sports should see or would see. However, there are other countries, other parts of the world which have already achieved that.
Right.
And I believe that if we can just turn our heads and look around, not to say that we need to copy paste this model, not at all,
Hmm.
but just pick the best practices. If you know how to pick the best practices and then use your own head a little bit and understand how it can be used to improve and enrich the experience of sports education in the
Hmm.
country, in the city, in your institute, around you, in your society, then that'll be, I think those things work.
Wow, well, this was awesome, Naren, to be very honest. You know, while I was listening to you, I could just relate. Recently, a couple of days back, I was working with the kids from wrestling.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of kids coming from Haryana, Sonipat, MP, blah, blah, blah. And you know, that it just gave me a hit right now that I wish this model we could use on them. There would be so much change. Like
Correct.
right now, they are into sports completely, but if we could
Yes.
use this also and the education part on them, it's going to be so good in the coming years.
I hope
Awesome.
so. I hope so. Fingers crossed. I'm really excited for what's going to come, and I'm happy with the few people that are around us,
Hmm.
like-minded people, people at the same wavelength, around about the same age. So at least the mindset is a little
Same.
similar, and we know the benefit of this because so much so to say the first genish of people to get that kind of education
Hmm.
and to
Yeah.
already know what benefits it can reap for yourself. So
Yeah.
once we
Yeah.
know that, I think it'll be easier for us to pass it down.
Yes, absolutely. I'm hoping, even I'm excited for it.
Yes.
Great. Okay, awesome. So now, give me throw like a five key elements that students will gain. You think from sports education or sports management, like five key elements from your end.
One of the biggest is going to be a little aha moment, which is we get a little start a little shocked, but it's a little pleasant experience where you're like, oh, this is something new, but I've already heard about this. So the first is a little bit of an aha moment. I think that's something that they come out with. The other thing is where they're able to see that being applied almost instantly, because if you study about it, you have say a master class or a lecture, you're there for an hour or 2 hours. The next thing the kid does is goes to their ground, goes to a practice, goes to a tournament, goes to play some junior ISL, IPL selections, something like that, and they see it happen. So for them it's not that tough to already join the dots because the
Right.
industry is already doing it knowingly, unknowingly. The industry is already doing it, but the moment you can start like showing parallels, so that they see it happen in front of their eyes,
Right.
so the magic happens in front of them, so to say. um, the next is where you're able to give cues. So the
Hmm.
moment they're able to understand it, ये market में gap है, ये ऐसे क्यों कर रहे हैं, the moment you have a foundation or you have a system in which you're questioning the kid, where you're not just teaching but you are the devil's advocate,
Hmm. Hmm.
where
Hmm.
if the student is agreeing with something, as a educator or as somebody who is, so to say, teaching them something, you you show them the flip. Like if you're agreeing to it, I'm disagreeing to it, or if they are disagreeing to it the very next moment, but I'm agreeing to it. So the moment you have that little thought in them that question what is
Hmm.
around you, and coming to the fourth, what value can you add?
Right.
So your education system, your module needs to give students that kind of an exposure and that kind of a platform where they know what their value is and how they can add value to the already existing sports industry. Fifth one I'll come to.
I
Anyway,
think
go
fifth
on.
one. I think fifth one. We'll add it as teaching is an art.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It
So
is.
we
Every
absolutely
every
need.
day is a new painting. Every day is a
Exactly.
new masterpiece.
Absolutely, which is why I took it as a fifth element because that is the biggest element and the most important element I
I
feel.
agree. I agree. I agree. Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree with you anymore. And it's tough. Like you need to. I genuinely need to rack my brain sometimes and just shake out my brain. I'm saying, और क्या कर सकते हैं?
Yeah.
कि I know what I want to get. I know what the point is, but how else?
Right.
So
Yes,
yeah, teaching is enough.
absolutely.
Thank you so
And
much for
kids are
that.
very smart these days.
They are very smart. They're very smart. They are so they're very informed. You
Yeah.
cannot you cannot um, joke around in class with what you're teaching. They could be, should be, and would be more informed than you are.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
would know exactly what is going on. They're up to date with a lot of things. Um, so I think it's an additional responsibility. You
Absolutely.
need to be on your toes a lot more than you would need to earlier. And
Absolutely.
once the educator or the person who's teaching is on their toes, you see an immediate effect on the people who gaining knowledge in that particular moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree because I myself also deal with athletes who are almost kids and also at higher age and everything. So I know how, how it is. You can't even cross the border and you can't even be lesser than that.
Yes, yes, that's true.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, great. So, Naren, when what I want to understand it like when it comes to dealing with the real world, like how important it is to have theoretical as well as practical knowledge, because there are a lot of questions I also personally get from the kids that how important it is. We really need theory or practical knowledge is enough.
Yeah,
So,
and
how would be your take
I,
on it?
anybody who asks you this question, just answer. I'll give you a 1 month masterclass on whichever online platform you're using on how to take your first step to how to
Hmm.
run. I do this
Hmm.
entire thing online. See the dumbfounded look on their face. And that's exactly what education is. You cannot, and you need, there are some things that needs to be part of the design. It needs to be part of your curriculum, because it's very
Hmm.
easy to neglect something like this on part of the educator, on part of an institute, because it's additional work. It's something that you're going
Right.
beyond.
Right.
You're using you're expanding your own network for no good of your own. So it's additional effort. And if this is not part of the design, the students are never going to ask for it, because
Correct.
how are they going to know about it? What will they know about, or how much would they know about how good practical experiences or life
Hmm.
experiences are for them? And the
Hmm.
moment it becomes part of the design, but when it is presented to the kid, it is as if they have stumbled upon this by themselves. There's a process of discovery for them.
Right.
So we on the back end, I'm I feel bad doing this on an episode right now, but giving out our tips and tricks. But we on the back end know it is part of our curriculum. However, it is a moment of discovery on the front end, and the moment it's a moment of discovery, and they know that this is not forced upon them. It is something that has naturally occurred. They are much
Hmm.
more involved, and the
Yeah.
moment they are much more involved, they're able to grasp and to learn as much
Yeah.
as possible, and then again go back to the principles and everything we talked about earlier. But they're able to do better and then
Better. Yeah.
eventually add value when they are part of the industry. So I'm not going to talk about if it is important. It is,
Hmm.
but the method in which you present it. And I'll just give you
Hmm.
a small example. For example, if you're teaching, if you coming down to brass tacks, if in one of the semesters you have sports league management as a subject that you're teaching, then you're teaching PR, advertising and sponsorship, and the
Hmm.
last is probably some workshop on league management. Now if you want to give your students a life experience, let them conduct an event of their own.
Hmm.
Instead of
Correct.
telling them, कि जाओ कहीं 60 hours का internship करके आओ, let them do it themselves. This particular semester they have already learned these things, which would be crucial for them to conduct something of their own, and enough. And some parts, the process of registration, the
Hmm.
process of writing a sponsorship proposal or
Hmm.
letter, is something that's a moment of discovery for them. And the moment they type it down themselves at respected sir, and these are our deliverables, and they're like, अरे sir ये इसको क्या बोलते हैं? हाँ deliverables बोलते हैं. And
Right.
that's going to stick with them for life, because that's a process of discovery. So you make them go through the entire grill
Hmm.
on the back end.
Hmm.
You create a entire foundation where you know it's going to lead to them getting an event, and then they lead to these points of discovery. So I think something like that is really beneficial for the client,
Hmm.
which is the student.
Awesome. I think I might just use it now.
Yeah,
Now that you've given.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'm telling you, these are tips and tricks that we're doing on the completely wrong platform for now.
But this is definitely going to be important for people who are watching this. However, awesome. But thank you for the tip, Naren. I'll follow it.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, great. So, lastly, before we end this, I want to know your journey. like how was your journey taking sports education as your core expertise? Like how did you start and how did the journey is going now until now?
So for me, the biggest problem was that I was little good at both, at the sport itself and at the education side of things also. And talking about everything that we did, I was able to make an informed decision as to
Right.
which path should I choose.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, my support system around, we are very involved in each other's decision making, not in a naggy or pokey way, but it's an informed decision that is taken as a group. And this is something that I presented to the family, saying that this
Mm-hmm.
is something that could be done. And the most important part is coming back to the point of efficiency. I'm able to do a lot more with the same amount of input. For example, if I was to go become a CA or
Hmm.
like a doctor or whatever, I would have to put in 2 hours worth of effort, and I'd only get an output worth of say 15 minutes or half an hour. My my work, that the work that I churn out will not be of quality because I do not enjoy what I do.
Right.
And for me,
Right.
I knew sports is something I enjoy. I'm not sure if I can play it professionally, but what next? And that's my process. I stumbled upon it. I got a little lucky, but still ended up making an informed decision because of all the things that I talked about previously, where you are able to make an informed decision. And now, except for your Bombay or a few places in Bombay or Pune or Bangalore, you have multiple institutes who are doing this, and I'm just talking about a 4 to 5 year difference.
Hmm.
Within
Right.
4 to 5 years, the pure numbers of institutes, even your IIMs now are putting this as a course.
Yes.
It's an integrated course, and I think that's the biggest stamp of validity that the sports management industry can get. But now people can make a lot more informed choice. But for me, I purely stumbled upon it because I knew this is all I'm good for, so to say.
Yeah.
I knew sometimes people say don't ever put your eggs in one basket. I was like, I have only one basket. I have no other options. And jokes apart, I knew what I wanted. I knew where the intellect comes from and what more can be done in this, and what the next steps are. So didn't just think one step ahead. Like, all right, I didn't just think about I want to come to Ironwood, finish my
Hmm.
degree, and then what. I already thought about getting an experience, getting to know what the industry is about. Bombay is leaps beyond what my city is currently, and the exposure, just the exposure, and everything comes with it. The amount of professionalism, and I knew why coming to Bombay and why coming to an institute like Ironwood was important for me, for my growth, and being completely selfish. And I knew what the next step is, and after this what I want to achieve. So I knew at least where the next 2 to 3 years look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think now short term, medium term, and long term is different. 5 years is long term, 2 to 3 years is medium term. Well, it's a gone concept that 10 years is long term anymore. So if you're able to plan for medium term and make an
Yeah.
informed decision, I think it's better. I think we as a body of alumni, we can help, or we can
Yeah.
be a voicing board, at
Yeah.
worst, a voicing board for anybody who wants to know more. So I think there are more opportunities to make an informed decision. I stumbled upon it, got a little lucky. Thanks a lot to Ironwood also. But yeah, that's about it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Awesome. Really awesome. Thank you so much, Naren. I think three tips that I will take from you is first, teaching is an art.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Second, yes. Second, very important. I think you need to enjoy what you're working as and what you're taking up your career as. And thirdly, it is very important to have support from your education,
Yes.
parents, coaches, everyone, family. Yeah,
Yes,
I
it's
think these three I will take upon from this.
I'm glad. I'm glad you put the fourth insider trick on the little back burner. That
Yes,
insider trick is for us. We don't mention it anywhere.
that was the plan. That is only for myself.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, jokes apart, Naren, it was great having you here and having a quick chat with you. I hope we did not talk because this topic is talk much because this topic is
Yes.
something I think can go for hours and
Yes,
hours.
it can.
And
Yes, it can.
we need to probably hop on to a next episode for this again.
For sure.
But it
For
was
sure.
great talking
Thanks.
with you. And thank you so much for joining in here for us and doing this
Thanks.
with us. Thanks a
Always,
lot.
always, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the very best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rojina. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, great guys. I hope you guys enjoyed your session. I did, and I personally had a lot of tips to take over from this episode. So stay tuned for the next episode that is going to be live next Saturday, or probably we'll just confirm you with about it. Do follow our Instagram handles and social media handles to understand when is the next session and with whom we are going to do our next session. Because I'm not going to disclose it more. I am going to be assured about the fact that the next episode is going to be really, really important, and you will be able to understand more about the real world of sports management. So stay tuned and do follow our Instagram handle. Do follow our YouTube channel if you like this episodes and if you're liking the series of Let's Talk Sports. I'm going to sign off for today. Hope you have a great weekend. Happy weekend to you all. See you later. Bye bye.